So when you're first setting up your guitar, it'll come disassembled. So you screw in all of these legs on the bass, and then you take your pedal rod, you put it over the end of the leg here, like that. You swing it on, put it on like that, slide this aluminum thing in there, tighten this up finger tight. Don't go crazy with it, it'll hold. And then the pedal rods attach and detach by this means here. On this particular guitar, it's on there like that. And then you would just slide the pedal rod. That one's a little bit tough to do. You would just slide the pedal rod off the end of the guitar like that. And then down here, it connects into the body of the guitar. Just like that. So you take your pedal rod out, bend it down at an angle, slide it through the hole, which sometimes you'll have to maybe push up on the bell crank right here. Push up on that bell crank with the other hand. I've only got one hand working right now. So if you push that up, it'll bring this thing up for a little bit more access. You'll be able to get it here. So slide that in there, come up here, push that in here. This isn't the best system. You can actually replace these things out, these two things out, with just one locking collar that just locks over there. That'll work for now, but it's not the best system. So that is upgradable, as along with those diamond tuners that I was telling you about. Okay, this is the workings of the GES pedal steel guitar. I'm going to start with the underside first, just so you kind of know what's going on, how it's set up, how it's tuned. Basically, you've got a foot pedal here. That when you activate it, you activate this pedal rod. Comes down here. That's the cross rod. It lifts up. On the cross rod, attached to the cross rod, is a bell crank which moves right here. Inside the bell crank, it's a little collar, a lock collar. This thing's called the pull rod here. Pull rod goes through and connects up to the other end of the changer. So the pedal moves up, and on that pedal you're seeing the bell crank on string 5 and string 10 move for the A pedal. So you follow that down here, and you've got your changer fingers there, same pedal. You see number 5 and 10 moving up. So basically the pedal rod goes through the changer finger and is attached on that end with some, that's a spacer, on the other end is a tuning collar. Those look like that. And on the end you tune it with a hex rod, hex nut on there. So you can see as I move the pedals, there's 5, there's 10 moving in and out. So as you screw those screws in, you shorten the length of the pull rod, which then will raise it to a higher note. So in the beginning, your guitar should be set up so that all of these things are in alignment. Nothing this way, which would be sharp of the note, nothing that way, which would be flat of the note. So in the beginning, you want it all set up just like that, so that when you do a raise, it raises to the predetermined point. And then a lower, here's strings 4 and 8 lowering, would look like that. So on your raise, it's determined by how far you raise those fingers, by how tight the screws are on this side of the guitar here. Now you can only go so far with these screws on the outside, tightening them up, before this will just start to move itself sharp. So if you see, when nothing is engaged, no pedals, no knee levers, you see one of these levers sharp like that above it, that means that you've tightened too much on the outside collar, and you need to loosen that up until it's all even. Once it's even and then you still can't raise it far enough, that means that on this end of the guitar, the pedal is not traveling far enough. And as you can see there, as it travels up, it hits that stop right there. That's the stop, the pedal stop. So if you're finding your note's not going as sharp as you'd like it, after you've tuned the other end of the guitar to the point where it starts making the note sharp, then you would loosen this nut here and then back out that screw so that the pedal can travel further, therefore bringing the note up to the pitch that you'd like it. Set up ideally, you won't ever have to adjust that one. You'll just have to tune down here on the outside of these nuts. But if there's not enough play in here, if there's not enough room to go sharper than it was set up to go, then you would have to change that set screw right there. And each pedal has one for all three pedals. Now on the lowers, you'll see 4 and 8 here. Lower. That's what a lower looks like. And as the lowers go down, there's a set screw in this aluminum block here that comes out and will limit the travel of that lower. So, and those screws, now this guitar is upside down, remember, so when it's right side up, this will be opposite. So on the, when you're sitting down behind the guitar, the top row here, these 2 screws, these 3, will limit the travel of the lower. So when the lowering finger lowers like that, it stops against this screw here. Now one of the problems you might find is that the lowers aren't lowering all the way, and that might be because the raise on the same string has to have slack in it. So right now that's where the raise would start, but if I push the lever, you can see all that distance between those two. That's called the slack or the slop. You have to have that much slop in here so that the lower can lower all the way. See how the lowers go all the way down like that? Now sometimes if these raise screws are raised too much, it'll take that slop away and not allow the lower to go all the way down. So you want, when you're setting this up for the first time, you want to start right there on your lowers, and that's where the raise would begin. So the raise is not going to be, see how when I lower this it takes those down with it? So you got to have it that much there so that when, and then from here you can go up. Now if you can't get enough of a raise out of here and you've adjusted the lowers so that you have enough slop in it, now if you can't get enough raise still, then you would come down here to your knee lever and you would just make your knee lever travel further, which as you can see, that's the knee lever adjustment screw right here. That's the travel adjustment screw down here. So you can see as I move this knee lever, it's going to hit against that screw and stop it right there. Now this screw up here is the knee lever angle adjustment. That adjusts the angle of the knee lever. So as you can see, nothing's going on right now. It's just the knee lever traveling freely until it hits that adjustment screw, and then that adjustment screw allows the whole thing to pivot back. So that's just really setting the angle here so that your knee hits it where you'd like it to hit it as you're playing. And so then you have the back screw that stops it, which would be that one to the right. That would stop it. So in other words, if you're trying to raise the 4th string or the 8th string and it's not going fast, high enough for you, you can adjust it on this end of the guitar with the set screws only to a certain point. Once you adjust it to a certain point, then your lowers won't go low enough. So I have it set right now to be the bare minimum. So if you really need much more of a raise, you'll have to come back here and put this screw out on the right hand side so that your knee lever will travel further. That's the biggest problem you're going to find out, is if you don't have the slop. You got to have that slop, otherwise when you lower the string, it won't go all the way lowered because this will be stopping it. Say it were to stop right here, you can see like up here, if you would have had it set up to stopping there, obviously the lower wouldn't go all the way through, and see how it's going to push through. If you didn't have any slop in it, it wouldn't go down at all, right? So I'm going to hold it so that there's no slop. And you can see as I push the lower, nothing happens. Until you let up on that, then it will allow it to go. So you need that slack in there. Enough said. And then the second string lowers too on this knee pedal here, on this knee lever here. So what I have it set up for is a half stop feeler. which is that mechanism there with that spring and collar right there. You can see that as this lowers, it's going to hit this adjustment knob right here, and you can screw this adjustment knob in or out so that this gap between these two is either smaller or greater. So what you're really doing is you're lowering it freely until it hits that adjustment screw. Once it hits that adjustment screw, it's going to engage the spring here on the end, and then you're going to feel the tension of that spring. See, the spring doesn't compress at all until you hit that feeler right there. Once it hits that feeler, then you can see the spring will compress. And so thereby you're able to tune the second string to two different notes. So as you hit the first stop in that thing, it lowers here, and that will be your D sharp to your D note there. And then you go half a note lower there to your E sharp note, or E note, E sharp, whatever the note is. You go from D sharp to D to C sharp right there. And that's all accomplished by this half stop adjustment there. Once again, this screw here is adjustable in and out. Just reach under the guitar as you're playing it, and you can tune it in or out to make that note either sharp or flat of where it currently is, wherever you want it to. And again, on this knee lever, you also have both adjustments for the stop of it, which is the bottom one to the right. See where it stops the knee lever from traveling. So if you're not getting enough travel in the note, you want it to go lower than it actually is, then you can hit it up with that stop on the right. This, again, is the knee lever angle stop. So that'll make your angle so like when you're playing it, it'll start to engage right there or wherever you set that engagement point. Right now I have it kind of set to that point. Now on the second string, you're not raising it and you're not raising that note at all, so you don't have to have any slop built into any kind of thing because there's no raise. So you can go straight to there, and again it's going to hit a stop screw on the outside here. The very top row as you're seated behind the guitar is the stop adjustment screws. So to get that note on the second string, when it's all the way lowered to be in tune, you would set that stop screw up from the outside of the guitar to stop. I don't think we can get that on camera, where that screw is, but it's right down there and it's stopping against the two right there. If I were to take that screw and screw it into the guitar, it would make it stop somewhere around there or there or there or there. Or if you let it out, it makes it go further so you can lower the note more. So that's how to tune the very lowered note. To tune the half note, you would tune it there. And of course the open notes on the top end of the guitar on your tuners. These springs in here are kind of what holds the whole guitar in a neutral position. So this, you're not normally going to ever have to mess with any of this stuff here. It's involved in both the lowering of the strings and in keeping them in the neutral position. The neutral position means straight here. These springs hold this whole thing back, and there's a stop on this side of this stop bar here so that they can only travel so far forward before actually raising. So that's the neutral position. This adjusts them. This adjusts the tension on the springs. You shouldn't normally have to adjust any of this stuff. Only if you're moving one of your lowers to a different thing, then you would have to change this top rod along with this stop collar here. And that is involved in the lowers, as you can see here when I'm lowering the strings. It's actually what connects to the pedal rod and then pushes down to allow that whole thing to lower. Normally you're not going to have to worry about that. You will have to worry about this stuff here. Now, this guitar is set up with these brass sleeves that have been threaded, and then this hex head screw put in the end, so this whole thing turns in and out to adjust the tuning. Modern guitars have nylon tuners on them that allow for that. And so if you were to want to change over, you would just take all of these off And that's a 632 thread underneath there, and just have your nylon tuners drilled out to slightly below that so that they get a good grip and put them on there. And it would be actually more effective than these things. Now these things, if you take these brass barrels off, they're really loose on the pull rod. The way it was designed, and I don't necessarily agree with it, is they were designed to be loose on there and then wrapped with a bunch of pipe thread, nylon threading tape to tighten it up. So the more of this on there, the tighter that turn comes. So if any of these lock up on you, if you keep these on here and they start to lock up, be hard to turn, you basically have to take the whole thing off and then take off some of this nylon piping thread and then rewrap it to a less degree so that it's not quite as tight. I did that with them all now, but who knows if they'll lock up or not in the future. So that's basically the underside of the guitar for just keeping it in tune and maintenance wise. This knee lever here, you see it's got the stop here for the travel. And it's also got an angle adjustment there. All that can be set up custom to whatever you need it for how you like to play your feel. And other than that, that's pretty much the basics. If you want to get into a little bit more, the bell cranks here have different holes in them. The higher the hole is that you have your pull rod attached to, the faster the note will be pulled up to pitch. But in doing so, the faster it pulls to pitch, also the harder it is to pull. So you'll feel more pressure on the pedal the higher it is on that bell crank. But it will get in to pitch a lot quicker. Sometimes you want to adjust that depending on different needs. The lower, now conversely, the lower it is in the lower hole here, the slower it will go up the pitch and the easier it is to get the pull on it, an easier feel. Ideally, you want every note on each pedal to rise and fall at the same time. So you can see roughly the 5 and the 10 start and stop at the same position. So as those notes on those strings rise and fall, they'll sound much better as they're in unison. And to make that happen, you don't necessarily have to match the holes. In this case, they are matched here. They're in the same hole, but over here, they're probably not in the same hole. As you see, string 5, the bottom hole is being used on that end, and the top hole is on string 10. And you can see the bottom hole's moving there on 5, and the top is on 10. That's what's matching those up so that they move in unison. Now, this particular changer design, they only have 2 holes on them. Some have many more holes so that you can balance the poles out, and they only have those 2. But on this end of the guitar, converse to the other end of the guitar, it's the opposite. The higher you are on the changer finger, the top hole is the slower movement, and it's easier. And if you were to put it down one hole, it's a little bit quicker to move the note up to pitch, but it's a little bit harder to do physically. So between the combinations of both ends, you can kind of really manipulate how the pedals are matched to each other. Right here you have a pickup tap switch. Your pickup is wound on this guitar to, I think, 10K and 12K, and this switches between both of them. I believe that's the 12K position, which I believe it sounds best in personally. And that's basically it on the bottom side of the guitar. Top side here, it's all pretty basics. These are your tuning machines. They tune the open notes. This is an antiquated tuning machine, and as you turn it, there's a lot of slop in it, so it's really frustrating to get the notes in pitch. As you start to drop it in pitch, it really there's just a lot of slop in it. And then as you're sitting at the guitar, Of course, you've got your pickup right there, and that's adjustable with these 4 screws. I've got it adjusted now so that it's at the proper height to your strings. You can adjust it if you want to, if you're feeling like you need to. And on this end of the guitar, the right-hand side, that's where the tuning takes place. And once again, that top row of screws right here, that's the limit for the lowers. So that's string 2 lowering, 4 and 8. That's the stop point. Down here, this adjusts how far the other notes from the pedals raise. And the knee levers here, like here is the knee lever raising the 4th and the 8th string. You would adjust those to either raise the string more or raise the string less. Same with the lowers. So this is pedal A and B together. You can see that all of those are moving. And those would adjust how far the string goes. There's your input jack for your pickup. And that's basically it. I'll pack this thing up, get it shipped off to you. And hopefully you'll love it. It's a great guitar. Okay, some other notes. The pedal height is adjustable through loosening this screw, and then these things will screw up and down on this shaft. I've got it set up to where this is a little bit higher than the B pedal, which is normal. Most people have it set up like that so that when your foot hits it at the angle that you're going to be sitting at, you're at an angle really, so that really they both engage at the exact same time. If they were to be even wise and didn't have a slight raise on that A pedal, you wouldn't hit the A pedal for a while after the B pedal was already raising. And you can test that out by putting on a tuner and then sitting in your normal position and pushing both pedals and seeing that they both kind of engage at the same time, roughly. But if you need to adjust it for any reason, that's how you adjust it with those screws there on the pedals. So you would raise this by screwing this clockwise up the rod. It would raise this pedal up, or it would, if you screwed it counterclockwise, it would lower the pedal down closer to the floor. And I got them pretty close to the floor already. That's pretty much where you want to keep it, unless you're finding some real difficulties with your foot or ankle or something. You can't rock off that A pedal while keeping the B pedal down. One of the things I forgot to mention earlier, talking about bell cranks and string matching, is that on the B pedal here, and you can see as I'm moving the B pedal, that's the strings 3 and 6. You ideally want those things to make 3 and 6 rise synchronous with each other, but as you can see here, 3 starts much earlier and then 6 kicks in about halfway through. But that's due to the limitation in the design of this guitar. There's no way to match them up with the current hardware that's on here. You can alter stuff, make a new part, and I'll show you what to do if you want to get those to match each other. But don't be freaking out that those don't match when you get the guitar, because that's as best you can do. And the reason being is string 3 travels much further, even though it's the same note as string 6. It's a thinner gauge wire, so it needs to travel further to reach where it needs to go. So it needs to start earlier and move further, whereas 6 doesn't have to go very far at all to get the same note. And the only way you can really match them out is if you have more holes, which you only have 2 in that changer finger, and there's not really a lot of room to create another hole. And even if you did drill another hole in the changer finger, there's no access point on the outside of the guitar to run that rod and the tuner through. So the way to cure that would be to come back here, and as you can see, string 3 is in the top hole of the bell crank, string 6 is in the bottom hole of it. And as I said earlier, the bottom, the lower you go on this, the slower the string's going to travel, and the easier it will be. So what you're seeing down here is string 6 is not moving slow enough. You want it to be even slower than it is so that it'll start at the same time 3 is and slowly move through. But it's not slow enough. The only way to make it slower on this guitar, the way it's set up and designed, is to get that string attached lower on the bell crank than it is. So as you can see right here, it's in that hole. What you really needed to do is get even lower, closer to this cross rod here. So what you could do is, if you want to take this whole thing apart, pull this off of here. There's not really room to drill another hole out closer to the bell crank in here, but it'd be easy to make another one of these. And then just when you make it, manufacture that last hole really close to the bell crank here, and that'll make it even slower. Whether it'll be slow enough to match the 3rd string, I'm not sure. But then you could also make a 3rd bell crank, another bell crank with a hole higher than this, so it would speed it up and match it to the slowing down of this. But right now 3 and 5 are really moving in synchronous together, which you want them to. So A and B pedals move good with the 3rd string. It's just the 6 lags behind, so I'd really just lower that 6th string down. But that's an advanced thing to do as far as wanting all those things to be synchronous. I wouldn't worry about it for now. I just play the guitar, get to learn to play it, and at some future point, if you're still on this guitar, which it is a good guitar, and actually if I owned it myself, I would make that adjustment to it, because I'm real super anal about the notes matching as they go. So I would do that myself, but I didn't want to take the time to do that on this guitar, because it's probably 4 hours worth of work just dismantling all this and putting it all back together and making the part for it. But it can be done. It's not, rocket science in doing. But it's still a great guitar, even though those particular strings aren't matching. And as you can see, strings on pedal C, I've got to match pretty well. 4 and 5 move. And that sounds real pretty when you squeeze that C pedal in, that those two are matching their travel like that. And a lot of guitars, you can't get them to match that good on the C pedal, but these match really well. So it's just the B pedal that isn't totally synchronous, but I don't think it's going to cause you any kind of real problems, at least not for a long time. So that's it.